So, the ego's use of guilt, of course, is perhaps some of our concepts will become clearer and more personally meaningful if the ego's use of guilt is clarified. The ego has a purpose just as the Holy Spirit has. The ego's purpose is fear because only the fearful can be egotistic. The ego's logic is as impeccable as that of the Holy Spirit's because your mind has the means at its disposal to side with heaven or earth as it elects. But again, remember that both are in you. So a moment ago when I said, the devil or the angel or the heaven or hell, it's that same point. Do I go home or do I head in that direction? Or am I going to go to earth? Am I going to go to the concrete? That quote from the Course we say quite often, power, fame, money, physical pleasures, to whom do these things belong? And this is all the material world. Or kind of realize that as the Course says, heaven's not even a place. It's very hard for us to understand that because we tend, the mind wants to think in terms of physical form. But it says it's merely an awareness. It's an awareness of perfect oneness and the realization that there's nothing outside of this oneness, which means that you're then a part of this oneness yourself. And God is love, and so it's a place of love. So the Course also distinguishes between wrong-mindedness and right-mindedness. I wrote about this in last Sunday's Sunday with Monday, a little epistle thing. But I thought this would be helpful to clarify. This is from the Course of wrong-mindedness listens to the ego and makes illusions, perceiving sin and justifying anger and seeing guilt, disease and death as real. So this is with the wrong mind. The wrong mind's going in this direction. Right-mindedness is properly used as a correction for wrong-mindedness and applies to the state of mind that induces accurate perception. Or so right-mindedness is loving and healing. Wrong-mindedness is condemnatory and hurtful. That's a very clear understanding the difference of it. So right-mindedness, I'm extending love. Wrong-mindedness, I'm condemning the world that I'm seeing. I'm attacking the world that I'm seeing. Whatever that is, that means to attack, whether I'm cursing the world or whether I'm pointing out all the flaws and the problems of the world. And this can lead to a very hurtful position because this condemnatory also tends to be punitive, whereas right-mindedness is healing. Right? So that's quite, love everything of which you are a part, or you cannot learn of his peace. Learn everything of which you are a part. So what the ego makes, it keeps to itself, and so it is without strength. Its existence is unshared. Now that's one of the things that's so happens so often in the Course is this idea of sharing, right? And then it describes heaven as a state of sharing. Now, I just got through saying it's not a matter of form, so that makes it difficult. What is being shared? Well, the love is being shared. We can understand what it means to be sharing love, and that doesn't require being in a physical proximity with another person. You're loving who that person is or that experience is uh, without any kind of physical thing there. It does not die. It merely was never born. The ego we're talking about. So the ego, you can't kill an ego because it was never born to start with. Physical birth is not a beginning, it is a continuing. That's an interesting idea. So the question has come up several times about is there reincarnation? And in the clarification of terms, it says that in the word ultimately there's no reincarnation. It doesn't say there's no reincarnation, it says ultimately there's not. And this sentence here implies that physical birth is a continuing, so that would imply reincarnation right there. That there's a time and then another. If this is a school and we're here to learn a lesson, the best thing you can do is be learning that lesson so that we can, quote, graduate. All right. And if we're not learning the lesson, then what do you got to do? You got to go back to remedial. You get another set of lessons in order to learn the same kind of thing that was being learned in a different way. We all have a different set of lessons, obviously, that we're going through, depending upon our physical health, the kind of relationships we have with one another, whatever work it is we do in the world, etc. So the soul is immortal, which is why there's no time. That which is eternal cannot die. The body, yes, because the body is not eternal. All right. So at some point, the soul will let go of the body, and what we're looking for ultimately, is no body at all. No need to come back here. No need to return, right? And one of the things that what heaven is, and I think this is what makes it difficult to understand, it's a place of non-duality. So non-duality means there's no subject object. There's no me and other. There's, of course, very clearly said, there's one-mindedness. I think that's hard for us to understand what that's all about too. Loving is one way to have some idea what that's about. But it's not a matter of division or separation. It's not a matter of, there's no judgment. There's no, projection makes perception, right? We talk about this several times. But then there's two kinds of perception. There's the kind of perception that is loving, and then there's the kind of perception that, as we just said a moment ago, the wrong-minded, which is can take, making a mess out of things, attacking the world, right? But heaven transcends all of that. There's no subject object, there just is. Of course, the being is the state in which the mind is in communication, so it's with everything there is. Now, this idea of communication, that's also a characteristic. There's communication, there's sharing, there's communication, but somehow or another, this doesn't involve physicality. And we'll see what that's all about, right? As I say, we're very physically oriented. It will increase as you are willing to return the unhealed part of your mind to the higher part, returning it undivided to creation. So, undivided, see, it's undivided to creation. And so, as long as we're in this world, as you know, we all have very split minds, or very divided minds. They're caught between two kinds of extremes. I talked about this a little bit last week, but let me bring up a slide on that too. I have come to give you the foundation so that your own thoughts can make you really free. All right. So again, there's no ego in heaven. It's this wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. And you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Everything else is open to question. So the ego uses guilt to preserve the belief in sin. Guilt tells us we have sinned. That's the condemnatory part of it. As we have sinned, we deserve to be punished. That's the punitive part of it. This makes the separated ego seem very real. And going on with this thought, be certain that it's impossible God and the ego or yourself and it will ever meet. You seem to meet and make your strange alliances on grounds that have no meaning. So let's go back over this. Be certain that it's impossible that the ego or God and the ego or yourself and it will meet. It's impossible because first of all, there's no ego in heaven, right? And God's in heaven, right? So it's not going to happen. That couldn't happen because you're talking about the truth and an illusion being the same thing. Truth and illusion can't be, it's the truth or it's an illusion. And if it's truth, God is true. The ego is an illusion, so the ego has no reality. Back to this quote. So for your belief converges upon the body, the ego's chosen home. So remember, the body is very clearly the ego's chosen home. So it's tough. I mean, tough. Once we get into the body, then where I want to say impossible, seemingly very impossible. Jesus transcends it. That's what the resurrection is all about. It's about transcending the whole body idea. It's possible to do that, but as long as you got a body that you're walking around in, it's hard for you to understand that you're not a body. As we begin to let go of the body, no doubt that's going to be a very different kind of situation. You all know I had a death experience as you and all the death experiences you can look at, and they're talking about being someplace and seeing things. Well, wait a minute, there's eyes there and hearing things. Wait a minute, there, I mean, there are ears there. or having colors. What do you mean the colors? See, it's a dimension that we're looking to understand that we don't quite yet because we're still working within the framework of a body that lives in a world, which is, of course, is very clear is not world, in space and in time, which, of course, also is not real. That's why I'm going to go to this topic of all about nothing for the summer. So the ego joins with an illusion of yourself. You share with it, and yet illusions cannot join. So this is an illusion of ourself. It's often we make up, we make it up, we make up, and we get very concerned about, how does it look? And is this pretty enough today? And how does this look on me? Or, should I have my hair done another way? And just all that stuff that everybody, there's no one that's like gets caught in that phenomena of the world and how it looks to the world, it looks on the outside, etc. So they are the same and they are nothing. Their joining lies in nothingness, all right? Two are as meaningless as one or as 1,000. The ego joins with nothing being nothing. Again, the quote that we say a lot, power, fame, money, physical pleasure, to whom do these things belong? It's nothing. In the end, it's nothing. And there's absolutely nothing. That all disappears, but soul does not, because the soul can't. The soul is the eternal part that transcends the physicality of space and time. Right? So this is the way we look. You is a very frequently used word pronoun in the course, appearing 3,598 times. I'll tell you an interesting thing. Just yesterday, I checked this out. I wanted to see how many times the word God appears in the course. So this is a lot, 3,590. The word God, and for if you're a numerologist, we'll talk about this out. It appears 4,444 times. Four fours. Very interesting. God prepares four fours. All right. So, like I said, you are the thing, you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. There's two yous, three yous. There's the you as the ego. This is the you that thinks you're the home of evil, darkness, and sin. All right. That's the one that's all caught up in the world and the body and space and time. All right. Then there is the you that is the chooser, or that's like the Charlie that the mind that is trying to decide between these two choices. The two choices very simply are either ego or spirit. And insofar as we let the ego rule the roost, it's going to get us into all kinds of troubles. We're going to get into fears. We're going to get into anxiety. We're going to hurt feelings. We're going to maybe attack somebody else. But such an important concept in the course. Early on, in chapter 1, section 2, already it's talking about the importance of spirit and of revelation and of listening to the voice and paying attention to the voice which is there. And there's two things about, I think, to lift out about listening to the voice. It's it's not auditory in a literal sense, although it can be. Sometimes it is, and I've noticed that the times that it is often when it's most needed to be. And then it seems as though it's actually auditory. I mean, that it's actually from the outside coming to you. Most of the time, it's going to be inside in it's going to come in a revelatory sense. By revelatory sense, I mean it's going to come, aha, I see, or it may also come very simply in you're asking a question, you're kind of throwing a question out to I would be nice if, and then somehow or another, the thought follows, which is the answer. So the answer is there. It's like sometimes it may be like a gift, so to speak, that's actually given. You sort of need something or want something, and it's not a deliberate prayer. You're not stopping to pray, but you're thinking in the right way, and there the answer is, and that's listening. That's the really important part of listening, right? So separation from God is referred to in the Course as the tiny mad idea, as you know. The thought that the Son of God, that's all of us, could break away from divine unity and create a self apart from God. And you would know that probably have this memorized. It's very near the end of the Course. Into eternity where all is one, there crept a tiny mad idea, which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. We really should have, this is an absurd, ridiculous idea. It's an absurd, ridiculous idea to think that you can be separated from God. You cannot be separated from God. The ego can think that, and now the moment it thinks that, it's in trouble. And here's our Armenian esoteric philosopher G.I. Gurdjieff saying, awakening begins when a man realizes he's going nowhere and does not know where to go. Right? So, in other words, it's kind of lost, kind of needing a direction, needing something. And if you just keep wandering around, so that's why it's very helpful. We're lucky, and everybody's lucky that can begin to open to the spiritual dimension. But I mean, lucky that we've got the course, that somehow or another was given to you. And you may very well have had the experience of it literally kind of being just put in your hands, or you fell off a bookshelf, or some way that it came to you, which was not what you maybe thought you were looking for, but you were looking for something because you needed something at that juncture. So, of course, sin is the equivalent to separation, and the central concept in the ego's thought system. So, sin is the idea that something's gone wrong. The idea that I can separate. Remember, I said earlier that heaven, they often discussed it as a place of sharing. Okay, so if heaven's a place of sharing, so we're sharing the love, right? There's no sense of separation. Now sin comes in and there's not sharing. We're going in opposite directions, right? We're splitting up, we're headed for the door or whatever it is that's going on. We're making judgments. We're making judgments about the world. So sin is seen by the ego is incapable of correction because it represents our attack on our creator, who would never forgive us. So that's what the ego thinks, that it would never be forgiven, right? So we're really literally attacking the creator in the sense of I'm attacking my brother, I'm attacking the creator. If I'm stealing from my brother, I'm stealing from the creator. I'm also stealing from myself. If I'm lying to myself, I'm lying to the creator. And not that God is going to hear this as a lie or anything like that, but the sense of separation is there. You know that you're gone off course, literally gone off course. That, for example, that if you're telling a lie, nobody else may have any idea about this at all, but there's this division that comes into your mind because you know that that very act itself is a form of separation. You now have something that's secret, if you will, from the other. Sin is the proclamation that attack is real and guilt is justified. All right. And of course, this is not true. So the attraction of guilt is found in sin, not error. Sin will be repeated because of this attraction. Fear can become so acute that the sin is denied the acting out. So while guilt remains alluring, the mind grieves, stuck in sin, the idea of sin. So we got this attraction of guilt and attraction of God. This slide we had last week, but I'll bring it back to share it once more time and talk about it. It says, this you must remember, the attraction of guilt, whatever that is, we're going to talk about different kinds of guilt after we come back from the break, opposes the attraction of God. We could call about this the attraction of love, right? And love is an incredible attraction. When love is real, it pulls us in. We want to be there. We want to be sharing that. That's sharing, right? We want to be having that sharing going on. Otherwise, if the sense of separation is there, it's lonely and it's disheartening and it's not pleasant. So his attraction for you remains unlimited, but because your power being his is as great as his, now we're talking about God here, you can turn away from love, but you invest in guilt, you withdraw from God. I'm investing over here, if I'm all caught up in the world and making the world really real and important, then I'm also pulling away from spirit and I'm pulling away from truth. There's more than one kind of guilt. Now, the Course doesn't really talk about existential guilt or moral guilt, but this would be one way that we could discuss this. Existential guilt, moral guilt, maybe you could use unconscious guilt and conscious guilt. I mean, the sense of this one is, it's buried, it's down there, it's under, it's not just mine, it's the guilt of mankind, it's the collective guilt. But it's also the repressed guilt, the guilt from childhood kind of stuff. And then there's the conscious or more the moral guilt. I know I lied. I know I cheated on that exam. I know, whatever the conscious, it's. So the course does not use this word existential or moral. It does say that the primary cause of guilt is our deeply buried unconscious awareness of separation from the infinite. So that is, so we don't even have this awareness of the separation in a conscious way, but it's there. The sense of being isolated or broken away from love itself or wholeness. And so I'm feeling alone and separate, right? So this guilt is a sense that life is meaningless or without purpose, or if there's a purpose, we don't know what it is. This is what I call existential. Might also be experienced in our failure to be true to ourselves. And the Course says, I would not forget my function because I would remember myself. This is I spent quite a number of years studying philosophy and at the New School University and teaching philosophy at the New School. And every once in a while I would come across comparative philosophy. By that I mean seeing things that are similar. And Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard is regarded as the man who started existential philosophy. I mean, he asked the questions that kind of got things going. I love him saying life can only be lived forward, but it can only be understood backwards, right? The truth in that. Right? So he held that our inner pain comes from not living authentically. So there's another person that was living at the same exact time in another part of the world, namely Henry David Thoreau. And I always thought it was interesting. So you see their dates. So Kierkegaard was born in 1813, died 1855, age 42, very young. Thoreau was born in 1817, died 1864, age 47. Neither one of these men ever married. Soren Kierkegaard had an unrequited love experience, but that didn't get him anywhere. She went elsewhere. And I like Thoreau saying, however mean your life is, meet it and live it. Do not shun it. Do not call it hard. It's not so hard as you are. Right? So they both had very inner lives and they went deep inside. They asked really important questions. They had a tremendous influence on the world, despite the fact that actually Kierkegaard ran counter to a lot of what he was saying, ran counter to the Danish church at the time. And so that wasn't working out too well because he was objecting to some of the rules and regulations and creeds and dogmas. And Thoreau, interesting enough, they're very deeply spiritual people, but Thoreau, he was baptized in a Unitarian church and he was buried in a Unitarian church cemetery. You can go visit it in Concord, Massachusetts. But he never went to church. And he would prefer to go into the woods. He said, I went to the woods because I wanted to live deliberately, he said, to confront the essentials of life and not find when it came time to die that I had not lived. So he found the life in nature. And one of the things I think is so interesting about Thoreau too is he never voted. He never went to church. He never voted. Why wouldn't he vote? But he wrote this book on civil disobedience, which Mahatma Gandhi read, and Mahatma Gandhi said it was because of that book that he realized that there could be civil disobedience, that you could stand up and without attack, without armament, without guns, without force, and make a difference. And then Martin Luther King said the same thing, that he also read civil disobedience, and had and following in the footsteps of Gandhi that you could do that you could have a life. So they influenced politics tremendously. But never involved in it in the attacking kind of way, but as an observer. Remember, the course is, it's important to get above the battlefield and then look and see, and you can be a much better observer from above than you can in the middle of the fight. Of course, as I would not forget my function because I remember myself. So this is another dimension of the existential part. And unless I fulfill my function, I will not experience the joy that is intended for me. To remember something, there must be first be something that I've forgotten. So we're trying to wake up, we're trying to remember ourselves. So this is another dimension. It's the existential part, the unconscious part. There's a you that you are, that you always have been, that we're trying to get back into contact with. And also in terms of the degree to which I've allowed the world to become a massive attraction for me, and I'm so caught in it that then I can't see anything. All right. Let's talk here. So existential, I think, has two possible ways of being understood. It might refer to someone who fails to follow a particular calling in life. Ministry, music, art, writing, whatever, if there's a calling there, medicine, social work, teaching, if you feel like you're being called in a particular direction, and then you cannot or do not follow that calling, then there's got to be a certain amount of this guilt and despair there. And I think I told you once before, I once knew a man who was a dentist, but he became a dancer because his parents insisted that he follow a financially secure career. And all his life, he felt like he had missed out on his calling. This is what he wanted to do. And instead, he was looking down people's mouths. Making $200,000 a year as opposed to questionable how much money he could earn over here, right? So Joe Campbell, as you probably know, is well remembered for for a few people, it could be remembered for just three words: follow your bliss. All right. I took a course at the C.G. Young Center in New York with Joe Campbell in 1973, shortly after they'd opened their center on 39th Street. Interesting enough that where this the C.G. Young Center in New York City is just a block up and across the street from where we have the seminary in New York now, which is inside a synagogue. So it means to pursue your path or your work or your life so that he gets joy and a sense of rightness, even if it's uncertain or unconventional, the life I'm talking about. Campbell believed that when we follow what truly lights us up, the universe opens doors for us. All right. So it's not about just chasing external experiences, but uncovering the inner joy that already exists in one's mind, hidden by fears, guilt, and ego illusions, accepting God's will as our own, and recognizing that true joy cannot be found in the world, but in remembering who we really are. So it has two dimensions. One is it might be a calling kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a calling kind of thing. For some people, that's true, right? Particularly artistic, whether music, art, whatever it is, that kind of a form. But it may be a helping career as well. But then there's just the whole benefit of finding life itself, enjoying life itself, getting joy out of, again, the sharing with family, with children, with friends, with whomever the sharing is with. In this sense, I always like Lesson 101, Perfect Happiness, the book that I wrote several years called Perfect Happiness, is based on Lesson 101. It's interesting. Lesson 101 is usually the beginning, right, of any class, right? But it's perfect happiness, and there's no reason you can't be happy in life, just living life kind of out loud. I mean, but what I used to refer to as, lucid living, really seeing, just being awake in the world, whatever it is that you're doing. That's another way of being waking up. So beyond this, of course, as guilt is always disruptive. Anything that engenders fear is divisive because it obeys the laws of division. The ego is the symbol of the separation. It's also the symbol of guilt. Guilt is more than merely not of God. It's a symbol of attack on God. This is a totally meaningless concept except to the ego, but do not underestimate the power of the ego's belief in it. So we're turning this belief around. We don't have to go there. We don't have to go. All we got to do is go back, chapter 21, first paragraph. I'm responsible for the world I see. And start living that way and start acting that way. I mean, start being that way within the world, responsible for my relationships, responsible for my work, whatever it is I have to do. So the more guilt we feel, the more we identify with the ego. And when you feel guilty, remember that the ego has indeed violated the laws of God, but you have not. The ego has. So remember that we started off talking about the three U's. There's the you, ego, the you, decision maker, and the you that it really is the soul you that's connected to back to God. So remember that you're not an ego. Leave the sins of the ego to me. This is Jesus speaking. That is what atonement is for. While you feel guilty, your ego is in command because only the ego can experience guilt. This need not be. So if I am experiencing guilt, then what I want to do is I want to stop and ask, why am I having this feeling? And you could probably find something right away that you could point to and then say that this is the thing that's taking me off track and this is something I can do something about. Also, a teacher of mine back in the 70s was Dr. Thomas Hora. He taught metapsychiatry, or what we now call transpersonal psychology. And I liked him saying, ignorance is not a person. And, when you see somebody who's doing something wrong, don't forget that it doesn't matter how dark the soul is, that there's a little spark of light in there somewhere. It may be 0.01%, but it can't go out completely. There is a part in there, and that's not a person. I mean, the ignorance is not a person. There's a person behind the ignorance. All right. So moral guilt is the type of guilt we feel when we're aware of it, like a lie or cheating at a game or taxes or something. Or if we know that we've hurt someone else or we get caught in an addiction or we can't get free of it. This guilt is not buried, but very obvious. So there's the guilt that's on the top. You're rarely aware of what it is that went wrong. There's the guilt that's buried. You don't know why you feel guilty. I don't know. You just I feel bad. Something is wrong, right? And then, of course, there's guilt and salvation must be in the same place. In understanding this, you are saved. So if it's in the same place, that place is a place we keep coming back to, that centered mind decision maker, right? And being able to go one way or the other. And then, of course, the continuing decision to remain separated is the only possible reason for continuing guilt feelings. We have said this before, but did not emphasize the destructive result of the decision. A decision in the mind will affect both behavior and experience. So I'm always looking at where I am at in this process and what kind of decisions I'm making. So what what you want, you expect. This is not delusional. Your mind does make your future, and it will turn back to full creation at any minute if it accepts the atonement for first. Now, as the atonement, as we all know, is the undoing of the ego, the relinquishment of the fear and the guilt and the anxiety and the terror. It will also return to full creation the instant it has done so, having given up its distorted thought. The proper ordering of thought comes quite apparent. I can always come back to center. I come back to center, and then everything is okay. So everyone has a special part to play in the atonement, but the message given to each one is always the same. God's Son is guiltless. Your God's Son, everyone is, in terms of the Course, and absolutely guiltless. Again, God does not see you as guilty. So our job is to see ourselves the way God sees us. Uh, each of us, each one teaches the message differently and learns it differently. Yet until he teaches it and learns it, he will suffer the pain of dim awareness that his true function remains unfulfilled in him. The body appears to be the symbol of sin, while you believe that it can get you what you want. While you believe that it can give you pleasure, you will also believe that it can bring you pain. A good example of that is overeating. I'll pleasure myself. And now I'm unhappy and painful because I over-pleasured myself, right? Or alcohol is another good example, or drugs, or whatever it is that would fit into that same category. To think you could be satisfied and happy with so little is to hurt yourself. The little piece of whatever it is that's taking my distraction away, the overeating, for example. And to limit the happiness that you would have called upon pain to fill your meager store and make your life complete. This is completion as the ego sees it, but for guilt it creeps in where happiness has been removed and substitute for it. Communion is another kind of completion which goes beyond guilt because it goes beyond the body. One of the ways that you can understand this is to be overly invested in the world and in the materiality and what it can give you, the pleasure it can give you. But none of that is going to give you any real pleasure, like just the pure experience of love is going to do. It has nothing to do with things or materiality or form at all. So if that's too much the direction I'm going in, then I'm going to get lost.